More on these stories at townhall.com. I'm Ron DeRockstra.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Little piece of
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainor, my co-host here, Leland Faegre, and it's time for another hour of hard-hitting commentary on what's going on in the world today.
Is there anybody else?
I don't think so, not in this area. I mean,
I'm referring to the Democrat elites who are concerned that they don't have anybody on stage who can beat Donald Trump.
Oh, yes.
Is there anybody else? Was from the New York Times a story this week that dramatically, I think, reveals just how concerned they are about the current field of candidates. They know they can't beat Trump, which is why they want this coup d'etat to be an ongoing one. You know.
Yes, of course. And they also, there's some candidates that whose names are being whispered, and one of them was in the news
It's quite a
for
story.
all of the last week for her podcast claiming that Hillary Clinton claimed that someone was being groomed by Russia. You know, that's a very enticing word, being groomed to become a third-party candidate. And she mentioned Jill Stein by name, but everybody knows that the Democratic presidential primary candidate she was referring to was Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi really hit her hard, and it's been in the news now for 5 days straight.
And you know the Clintons don't do anything without considering the ramifications, the outcome.
Yeah.
So it was clearly deliberate. It was designed to accomplish some end. And so for me, it clearly reveals that she doesn't believe there's anybody on that stage who can beat her.
Right.
Except for Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
So she is effectively throwing
the gauntlet. And Tulsi took it up, and she told her to get out from behind the curtains and declare herself for the candidacy or shut up.
Or shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta love that.
Yes.
I think this is heaven, isn't it?
Yes. I don't know what
I'm pretty sure this is heaven,
it's
right?
better than 70 virgins.
Yeah. I thought it was 72. But
well, all right. You know, you get 2 off for bad behavior.
Right.
But yes, and so get off her throne was another example, and
that this morning's
tweet or yesterday's tweet that was
Mm-hmm.
covered this morning. We couldn't figure out which, but yeah. So for too long, the Democratic Party has been the Clinton LLC, and everything has been geared around Hillary and her husband.
And you raise a good point, and it's clearly designed for the media to pick up on. And begin to ramp up the likelihood of her entering the race. Because I think it's a fait accompli. I don't think there's any chance of her not entering the race at this point. And she'd love to go after Tulsi, and the establishment is the only way that she's going to get support. You know, the mass, the MSNBC, CNN crowd. So,
but this was a total smear. This kind of the fact that she was exposed. And so all they can say is, that she met with Assad. That's the trope they use. She met with Assad. Well, Hillary met with Assad.
Who is the legitimate ruler
which nobody seems to mention.
Whom we should have left alone over the past decade.
Yes.
We wouldn't be in this mess now.
Right. Exactly. But our masters called from Tel Aviv.
But my libertarianism is showing, isn't it?
Yeah. Our masters called from Tel Aviv, and we took up arms. Tucker Carlson was the only one that mentioned to a Democratic talking head, spokesperson, that Assad protects the Christians. And if ISIS's black flag was flying over Damascus, the Christians would all be being beheaded, or even the so-called moderate opposition, if they took over, the same thing. they're talking about the chaos that ensued because of the incursion by Turkey into Syria. Nobody except the alternative media is mentioning that of the 28 militias that encompass what is called the Free Syria Defense, FSD. I believe there's two acronyms, and the Kurds are the
SDF.
Yeah, SDF, and the Turkish-backed is the
The acronyms.
FSD, yes.
Yeah, the acronyms go in one ear and out the
Yeah,
other.
I know. But out of those 28 named militias, 21 of them were those that we funded
Yeah, exactly.
at the outbreak of the war.
The American people never knew that this was going on, really. They didn't understand
No.
Syria. They didn't understand the basis of, we were trying to overthrow the legitimate ruler of Syria, which we should have never embarked upon.
It's a neocon scheme, you know.
Absolutely
Yes.
beyond comprehension that there was actually a movement to do so.
Don't forget the neocon battle plan, which has been articulated by different neocons, is first Baghdad, then Damascus, then real men go to Tehran, and finally a color revolution in Moscow to replace, Putin with a neoliberal. And that's been their battle plan. And
all the while, Erdogan is getting chummy with Putin.
well, of course.
Now, the rootin' tootin' Putin that we witness on the political stage, to me, doesn't threaten us.
No, he doesn't threaten us.
So what exactly is this all about, except the neoconservative globalism that we're all, or should be, trying to refuse to accept?
Yes, and Russia is emerging. Russia is getting something out of this. Russia is becoming the honest broker, because don't forget, Russia is friendly with Israel, but still friendly with the Palestinians, friendly with Iraq, friendly with Iran, very friendly with Syria. They just use blood and treasure to protect Assad. And they even are friendly with Saudi Arabia. They're even investing in Saudi Arabia and trying to
They've always had their foot in there.
Because of the oil,
Sure.
Basically. So Russia will be, Pat Buchanan said, let them have it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a headache for Russia. And
Absolutely. We destroyed it for them anyway.
yeah.
I mean, why would you want it? It's amazing. But I just loved what Tulsi had to say about Hillary,
Oh, yes.
describing her as the queen of warmongers, the embodiment of corruption, and the personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party.
Join the Funtime Theater this fall as we make the history of the Comstock.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Stay on the schedule. Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. My name is Brendan Trainor. My co-host here is Leland Faegre. And we were talking about Tulsi Gabbard, who finally stood up. I mean, she's not finally, because she's been doing it for years. Yeah. But publicly stood up. Her stand has gained over 40,000 Twitter followers, and she's moving up in the polls in Iowa.
Guess who's going to be on the next debate stage?
Yeah.
And I understand that she was actually considered for the Trump administration.
Yeah, she interviewed for some position.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but yeah. Yeah, because she is an American firster in her own way. Sure, she would probably spend more money than we would like or advocate some of these socialist policies, but at least she's going to take away from money that we're badly spending in all these regime change wars, instead of trying to institute
That's
I
where
haven't
the money
seen-
is, for sure.
Yeah. And she has she on the stage last week. She said she was against third trimester abortions, and she is for gun rights. Although she is also pushing for background checks and other things that are not necessary.
Won't become law.
Yeah, hopefully won't become law. But she does mention the constitutional right to keep and bear arms, and she's much better than the other Democrats. I mean, she is.
Well, that's why Clinton has singled her out.
Oh yes.
Again, I want to repeat my take on this, and that is that Hillary's coming into the race, and she looks at that stage, and there's nobody up there except Tulsi that she's concerned about. And that includes Biden, that includes Warren, any of that. There's no machine. None of these candidates have any machine. There is, I think, latent sympathy for Biden from the old machine Democrats.
Yeah.
They legitimately sense that he's a decent guy on some level. People, effectively believe that about him.
Which is being tarnished, and,
right,
as we speak.
As we're seeing it unfold with his son. So a lot of that is easily overcome, and that's how Clinton sees this, as the only way to the Oval Office is via Tulsi Gabbard.
Now, who was that other name that they were putting up as a viable candidate? You mentioned
Sherrod Brown. The New York Times article answered the question, is there anybody else with Sherrod Brown and Michelle Obama? Oh my God. These people aren't serious, and they will be revealed as clowns as time goes on, because people really aren't paying attention yet in the campaign. The campaign is underway, and that's why they're doing the Schiff Sham is doing this effectively grand jury testimonies now, because he knows damn well they wouldn't pass a smell test to public viewing.
Yes.
There's no televisions, just transcripts, which they don't allow Republicans to even look at, except with some sort of a House a congressional member standing by their side.
Yeah. They may not even be getting the oral transcript either.
They might not be getting the whole thing. Yeah. There may not even be an oral transcript.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. It's completely, it's a sham.
Uh-huh.
And it's designed, this is the Democrat campaign. Basically what they're doing is they know they can't beat him electorally, so they have to remove him, and this is their best shot. That's how pathetic this party is.
I know. This could be the end of the Democratic Party, at least as we know it?
I saw just that very we broached it here on this show previously, and then I saw someone the other day, maybe it was Gabbard. It was Gabbard. She said that this party will have to be reformed.
Yes.
That was part of her response to this effort to ostracize her for no reason.
Right. So the talk about all the chaos due to the Turkish incursion, the fact is that the chaos is primarily because Trump has been demanding a plan for withdrawal, and his subordinates have not been given to him.
The deep state fights him at every length, and of course, had we not gone in there in the first place, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, sure.
So we really need to address the fact that this problem was of our own making.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, like all interventions, government interventions lead to unintended consequences.
30
which
days
leads to more.
30 days turns into 10 years.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
I know.
And the refugee crisis of Europe.
Right.
We caused that.
And Angela Merkel came out last week and said that multiculturalism in Germany is a failure.
Yeah. And when there was another terrorist incident in Oslo yesterday or day before yesterday. So those people are out there creating chaos because we decided Assad must go.
Who must go?
What on earth are we doing out there? Well, and that's why this is such an extraordinary step this morning for Trump to make this statement, because it takes us in a proper direction for the first time in my lifetime with regards to foreign policy.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I mean, I was thrilled to hear what he's been saying. Now, whether he follows through on it, if the deep state lets him and so on, and what's going to be the outcome, I can only, hope and pray that it'll be what I, would imagine it should be. But it's at least, like you said, a very big step in the right direction.
Right, and even if it doesn't work out as planned, at least we're out of there. which which is
Iraq
mission accomplished.
Iraq doesn't want us either. They don't want us in there.
And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because to me it seems like what they're doing is setting the stage for our withdrawal from Iraq as well.
Oh, yes, they would like us out of there as well.
Yeah, there's 5,000 there, plus whatever remnants have left Syria, apparently. And it sets the stage for discussions for us to remove them completely from Iraq, which is basically a client state of Iran anyway.
And you know, there's been turmoil in Iraq, possibly a CIA color revolution of some kind. We don't have all the many details, but there has been violence in Iraq. There's turmoil in Hong Kong. There's turmoil again in Spain.
Santiago, Chile.
Santiago, Chile, which is a relatively well-off South American country. Chaos there. And
The Catalonian problem in Spain.
Oh, yes.
You know, it's all over the world. Whether it's planned insurgency or rebellion, or whether it's just a reaction to how exciting these times are, because these are very exciting times.
And, you know, my sources tell me that Zelensky in the Ukraine is under a lot of pressure. Even though he overwhelmingly won the election, and the Ukrainian parliament, called the Radya, I think, is on his side, and the people are on his side, there are still the skinheads, and there were demonstrations in hundreds of Ukrainian cities over the last week by the skinheads.
I would look at the Ukraine like I would Mexico. It was just corrupt to the core. It was
Yes.
perfect for the Clintons to go in there and claim it, which is what the current imbroglio here in the United States is about. And I just see this morning on an Associated Press story that Zelensky was pressured, as they say, squeezed in advance, a couple months before the much talked about conversation.
Some kind of meeting last spring?
Yeah, and so that would make sense, because they would have at least a sense of concern from the new administration that we wanted some answers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's no doubt that
Because the not to interrupt, but the Steele dossier originated around Ukrainian sources. That's what the Durham investigation, which, by the way, has apparently just opened wide. Did you see that story? There's a fourfold increase in the investigation that is going after. I think they've discovered something in Rome. Italy was always one of those outsourced countries that was doing our dirty work, so that they could get information without the U.S. Fingerprint on that skullduggery, basically, is what it was.
And Italy just visited Trump, the Italian.
Yeah, he was just here.
Do you think they might have talked about one or two
I'm
things?
thinking they might have. It might have come up.
But, you know, yeah, the Ukraine was totally in Hillary Clinton's camp. They put all their nickels in her basket.
And Biden.
And Biden, yep. But, I mean, as far as her presidential campaign, they were totally for Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had to really scramble when Trump won, like all the others.
Can you imagine what went on that night? The night of the election?
Yeah, I know. I know what it was like down here in Washoe County when people were cheering their heads off.
I was awake
every
until
time.
about 2 in the morning Mountain Time. I was in Montana at the time, and to me, I thought that was an earthquake. You know, and if it was an earthquake to us, because we didn't know the extent of the intelligence operation against Trump.
Yeah.
What was going on in their minds that night? Remember, there was about an hour and a half where there was no returns coming in at all. Wasn't
Yeah.
that the strangest thing you ever saw?
Yes, yeah.
Because they knew at that point they didn't have the votes. They were about 80,000 votes shy between Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Where were they going to come up with 80,000 votes? That's what they were thinking. Where can we grab 80,000 votes? Because there's too much on the line here.
Yes.
Because it was all about Clinton. And if she couldn't get over that threshold, this thing was going to blow up in their faces, and it has.
So, but it was not Hillary's fault. It was all the fault of those dastardly Russians and their bots.
Well, I didn't want to mention that.
And, Putin is being accused right now of willing to spend another $100,000 in Facebook ads to overthrow the 2020 election.
There's already apparently some ads out there that have been exposed as being from Russian sources. Of course. Where else could they be? Oh my gosh. Well, don't go away. What are we going to talk about in the next segment?
I'd like to talk about groundbreaking testimony in Washington, D.C.
Home at Last opens doors to family, to freedom, to finally making it yours. Home at Last, a program of the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, opens doors to rural home buyers with incomes of up to $135,000.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. And while I was an award-winning writer with the Reno News and Review, I did often write columns about the sex worker controversy.
There's a controversy?
Oh, yes, over sex trafficking, which is supposed to be ensnaring all these hundreds of thousands of women that are being forced into, sexual labor and seeing 100 clients a day and all these other outrageous
That's
claims.
something the government should get involved with, don't you think?
Yeah.
So they can regulate that for the better of mankind.
But last week we had a really historical, groundbreaking 14 hours of testimony and debate over a bill before the Washington, D.C. City Council that would decriminalize sex work in the nation's capital. I mean, it's already pretty rampant, let's face it. But, I mean, they would officially decriminalize it.
Does Congress know this?
No, they're going to jump all over this, aren't they? But anyway, it was interesting for what was said and for what was not said. The bill does not attempt to legalize sex work, and that's something that sex workers do not like the Nevada model, where it's legal but only in certain brothels and under certain regulations that are normally, almost all of them, I think there's one that's owned by a woman, but almost all of them are owned by men and so on. Then there is so it doesn't create a brothel situation in Washington. It doesn't even set up a sex worker registry. It simply acknowledges...
Well, what good is it then?
It simply acknowledges that people can have sex with money up front, and it's no business of the state.
Huh.
Yeah, isn't that something? So some things that were noticed during the debate is that the opponents of decriminalization basically fall into two or three camps. Some are the extreme feminists that say all sex work exploits women. They refuse to distinguish between voluntary prostitution, sex work, and human trafficking, where people are supposedly coerced against their will into being prostitutes. And this is Kamala Harris's position, which is one reason why I really don't like Kamala Harris. So the women are simply victims. They're inert, they have no autonomy, they have no self-direction. They're simply victims of male exploitation by pimps and johns. Now, the city councilman that is the sponsor of the bill, Councilman Grosso, he is white. So some blacks got up and pulled the race card and said he doesn't understand their community. He's just accused of just wanting to make rich white men happy by having sex with people of color.
I'm sure he's a member of the KKK.
Yeah. Or maybe he's a Putin-loving asset. We don't know. But
White supremacist, anyway.
Yeah, but actually, the resolution was the work of grassroots sex workers who went door to door in Washington, D.C., local community advocates, and most Johns that are caught up in stings are actually middle class and non-white. I mean, poor. A lot of Hispanics and middle class white people. And so the idea that it's only the wealthy can afford to go to a high class, service.
They can.
Very discreet, pay $1,000 a night.
Does Congress know this?
They don't need a decriminalization bill. And then the other large advocacy group were the large non-governmental organizations like the Polaris Group, whose propaganda was prominently displayed on the Nevada District Attorney's website. It probably still is. I haven't checked lately. But their whole means of making money is proselytizing about the evils of sex work and the dangers imposed by illusory sex traffickers. So they make their money by grossly inflating the dangers of prostitution. And so I call this, Huggy Bear is coming for your kids syndrome, and so now we have these women on Facebook that every time somebody looks at their little 9-year-old daughter, they think he's coming after them and to grab them and turn them into sex workers. And you see these posts on Facebook all the time. Boy, I'm glad I got out of there alive, because somebody looked crosswise at my daughter. So what this reveals is that the prohibitionists are no longer promoting primarily religious arguments that sex work is sinful, or even impacts on neighborhood nuisance, because with the advent of the internet, the number of streetwalkers has declined because they don't have to be on the street; they can advertise over the web. Although that's why with Kamala Harris and our Democratic senator were so bad to go after Backpage and to shut down a lot of these internet services, because all that will do is force more women
back on the street
where there's more chance of being arrested or being or having a violent John. So and then. Or increase in crime. Somehow by decriminalizing sex work, that means that there's going to be more crime, there's going to be more violence, and that doesn't make any sense to anybody that's got their head on straight.
Except Congress.
Yeah, except Congress and the local legislatures, because a lot of this is local ordinances and so on. So what they promote is called the Nordic model. It was originated in Sweden, and it's what they're using in Canada now. And it's been a failure everywhere it's been tried, but of course, if it's a failure, government's going to push it. So
nothing succeeds like failure.
Yeah. So they were that whole idea there. The whole idea of the Nordic model is not to tolerate prostitution, but to eliminate it. The only thing is they dress it up and say that they're not going after the poor sex workers, they're just going to go after the pimps and the Johns. So all that does is force sex workers, many of whom are in the business because they have they're single parents and they don't have degrees, and this is the most money they can make without a degree. And whether or not they like the work, which is another issue, that's one reason why it's survival sex for them. And it's more than survival, it gives them the opportunity for free time. They can set their own hours and so on.
I wonder if this would help the standard of living in the Ukraine.
Well, it's a known fact that the Ukraine is widely touted as having some of the most beautiful women in the world, the Southern Slavs, and but I've heard reports that 25% of the women in the Ukraine engage in sex work, which is also survival oriented. It is a big sex tourism state. There are several of those, but that's one.
Well, with the average income in the Ukraine being at $200 a month. Mm-hmm. It's really it's inexplicable.
Their rates are very, very low compared to Paris or any of the other large cities. More cosmopolitan, wealthy EU or American cities. Their rates are comparatively low, at least half of what you see in other cities. Mm-hmm. But so it does help them to some extent. I mean, but it is too much. I mean, I don't think 25% of American women are. I think more than we imagine, especially when you consider things like college girls, getting a sugar daddy and so on, which is not considered illegal sex work, by the way, but it is pretty prominent. It is kind of becoming more popular, but the exact percentage of American women that engage in sex work has been hard to pin down. But at any rate, so what they're actually trying to do, I was in Budapest last year as well, in Hungary, and this is the system they have in Hungary. They don't allow legal brothels, but they explicitly say that sex work is not illegal, and you can the workers can do it out of their own apartments, or they can go to a hotel room. And even, Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, would be glad to know that the massage, the happy ending massage people can advertise freely, and they can even say how they produce the happy ending. That's not illegal.
And he wouldn't be the headline in the local paper.
He wouldn't be, no. So this has a more than even chance of actually passing, and wouldn't that be something if the first American political entity to, unlike Nevada, which again is the legalization brothel method, but the first American entity to just decriminalize it and acknowledge the state has no reason to be involved in the private sexual transactions between consenting adults.
Does Congress know this?
I don't know. Because Congress probably has the power to veto it, even if they pass it.
And this is originating in the District of Columbia, so they better be aware of it.
Yes, I know. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And we can only hope that...
We're not going to report on that here on Talking Truth to Power, though, are we?
No.
Okay.
Maybe we should let Pierre Delecto know.
Yeah, Pierre Delecto, and then let the mainstream media follow, and then we'll summarize it for everyone once they break the story. Yeah.
Even in Amsterdam, the sex workers, they follow a legalization model, but where they have sex registries. They're regulated and they're taxed, and that would not be the case under a complete decriminalization bill.
Does Mitt Romney know this?
I guess maybe he should ask Pierre.
Hi, I'm Bill Kendall. I practiced law in Northern Nevada for over 25 years, and I specialize in representing injured people in their fights for just compensation and in representing parents in custody and visitation disputes.
You're invited to join Business Connections with Anita every Wednesday from 10 to 11 a.m. here on 1180 a.m. KCKQ America Matters.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainor, my co-host, Leland Faegre. And, with all the talk about whistleblowers, we had a real whistleblower who had a day in court the other day. Julian Assange.
And he apparently mumbled his way through it.
Yes, he doesn't appear to be in good shape.
Did you get images of it?
I did see some of the images.
I didn't see any images, I just read the story.
He said it was on the verge of tears, one story. And he did not, he's in bad shape. He's been in solitary confinement now for years and years, and without a lot of sunlight and...
No socialization?
No socialization, no.
That can take its toll.
Oh, yes, it can. And he has tried to get the hearing expedited regarding his extradition, and they did not, right? So he is facing extradition to the U.S., and the fear is that if he is extradited to the U.S., he will again be put in cold storage and will never get out. He'll never see a real trial. And so These are the real whistleblowers, not CIA operatives of the deep state.
And this is where the deep state really does its ugliest work.
Oh, yes.
You know, so this needs to be front and center. Because he wasn't doing anything except revealing information that we should all know about.
He's a journalist.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Just because he's not the New York Times, or actually particularly because he's not the New York
Yeah.
Times, he's a real journalist.
And they're frightened of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it all blows up.
And a lot of it is Pompeo's doing. You know, his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, when he was director of the CIA, called Assange a non-state intelligence operation.
Yeah.
And so that this is they do see him as real competition to what the propaganda that they're trying to put out there. And
a lot of people have a stake in
Yes.
in the lack of discovery of WikiLeaks.
And he probably holds a lot of keys to the whole Russiagate.
No question about
No
it.
question, because he keeps insisting that Russia did not hack the DNC, that they got the DNC information from non-state actors, and whether it's Seth Rich or some other disgruntled Bernie Sanders supporter at the DNC, someone who Tulsi Gabbard would have liked.
The complicity of CrowdStrike.
Yes.
There's just so much to this story, and I don't know if the American people are up to this. At least not yet.
Yeah.
Because, the IG report has been delayed again. Apparently, the agencies that are affected by this corruption are fighting all over the classification part of it. So we're not here. It was supposed to have been released late last week or
we
early
heard it
this
would
week.
be last week or this week.
Still
yeah.
not there. There is. Why doesn't Lindsey Graham act?
Exactly.
Is it because his buddy John McCain was an early recipient of the Steele dossier?
Oh, okay. Yes, remember it was John McCain that received the Steele dossier and dutifully, out of a sense of honor and patriotism, turned it over to the FBI.
The FBI.
Yeah.
What a guy, huh?
A true American patriot.
And, he hated Trump, and he was a globalist to the core, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Never saw a war he didn't want to get involved into. There is considerable suggestion that he was up to his eyeballs in this scandal, perhaps himself. And so Lindsey Graham could be protecting his friend John McCain, which is why he hasn't dutifully performed his duties his Senate intelligence role.
And he keeps promising he will. He keeps
talking
coming
about
out
it.
in front of the cameras and saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. and
All
nothing
talk,
happens.
no action.
Yeah, I know. And, so whatever Lindsey is up to, and you're right, it could be that, or it could be just his general ideological opposition, despite the fact that he has to come out and support the president, or he decides to after objecting. At first, he is ideologically opposed to what Donald Trump is doing.
He had once McCain left us, and I'm being really nice about how I describe that, because he's not missed from my perspective. But when he left us, there was almost an immediate association or change of heart that I saw in Lindsey Graham and every policy directive that came out of the administration. Suddenly he had Trump's ear, Trump had his ear. They're almost like buddies. And
Right.
literally transformational, overnight. And so I thought, well, McCain was holding him back. And I still believe that. That seems to be the most likely explanation. And that also could be the most likely explanation for why he's not performed in his proper role in the Senate Intelligence Committee. He could be subpoenaing people.
Right.
I mean, that chamber, his side of the chamber, could be as active as the congressional side right now.
Exactly.
What's holding it back?
Yes.
It's got to be McCain.
Yeah, unless there's, money power involved somewhere, but I'm not sure about that. But
Well,
yes.
there was apparently this morning, before we went on the air, there were 30 members of the House that stormed over to these closed hearings, the shift sham
Shift sham.
event, this effectively a grand jury, and they demanded presence. They demanded to be allowed in, and they were turned away. But 30 members of the House. These are Republicans.
Yes.
When's the last time we heard about Republicans getting excited about these kinds of things? These people are paralyzed when it comes to conflict, aren't they?
Yes.
Most of the time?
Yeah. With their, Donald Trump is the first Republican that actually brought a gun to a gunfight instead of bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
So maybe he's having the desired effect on these wobbly-kneed Republicans.
Well,
remains to be seen. But
we'll have to hope so.
Yeah, that was pretty good stuff this morning.
Yeah, and but there are so many people that could be brought up before his committee, and it's just a shame because we're only seeing constant drumbeats. We're on the defensive. We should be on the offensive.
The common analysis of this is that they're waiting for the IG report.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, pourquoi? Why are we waiting for that?
I know. Why should we?
Yeah.
Why not start the process?
Yeah.
I mean, the issue of subpoenas, it's going to take a little while.
We're starting it here on the Talking Truth to Power program. That's what
right. That's what we need to hear.
Yeah.
Can we subpoena anybody?
I think we can.
Yes.
And if we can't, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, we should have, maybe something like citizen grand juries. That's been an idea that's been going around in the Patriot community for quite a while.
Yeah.
But at any rate, while Tulsi is attacking the left as warmongers, it's people on the right, the grassroots, is starting to attack the warmongers in the Republican Party. And there are a couple of websites that have sprung up. I don't know if any of you got the Republican Presidential Task Force Strategy Survey that I got in the mail, which is, a fundraising document, but it asks you a lot of questions about foreign policy, and this whole thing must have been written by Lynn Cheney. What foreign nation do you believe poses the greatest threat to the United States in the next 2 years? Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, other, or all of the above? What about CIA?
My answer would have been other.
Exactly. My answer would have been other, too. And, the questions are, these people have got to go. Liz Cheney is a congresswoman from Wyoming now, and she either wants to run for the Senate or she hopes that the Republicans will take over the House and she'll be the Speaker of the House. And
she's ambitious, I think. Her pedigree would suggest that she would seek that kind of an office. Remember when Dick proclaimed his membership in the Council on Foreign Relations and joked that he was glad that his constituency didn't know he was a member? Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting about him. I'm actually surprised that Lynn Cheney is as supportive of Trump as she's revealed herself, because that her heart is in that neoconservative meddling mindset.
Well, it's up to Republicans to attack Republicans, warmongers.
Is it?
Yeah, so there are some websites starting up. One of the best ones is www.bringourtroopshome.us. And that's a Republican and based in Idaho, but he is claiming that other states are in line to create a similar movement. Nevada should certainly be in it. And you put a WY in front of it, WY bringourtroopshome.com, and that's a Republican state representative in Wyoming that wants to take on Liz Cheney in the primary. So, just like Tulsi is attacking the left-wing warmongers, the neoliberals. Boy, I was really so glad to hear somebody use that word disparagingly.
Neoliberal?
Yeah. So, it's up to Republicans to assert themselves and stand up for the president. The president is issuing, in the last few weeks because of the Syria, he's been set free a little bit because the chaos, as it's claimed, is really helping him, I think, and the world.
Oh, I think so. I think it's pretty clear that's the case. So, what's Judge Judy supporting Bloomberg for?
Because they're both authoritarian, They're both nanny state people.
Thanks for joining us on Talking Truth to Power today, all over northern Nevada and around the world.